Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute in this debate on behalf of the citizens of Tego Martin West and on behalf of all the constituencies on this side and constituencies even on that side that often feel underrepresented. Let me begin by dealing with a few things the previous speaker touched on. He mentioned the PNM is dead and the Balize is dead. Well, let me tell you something, my brother, from Tobago West. Anywhere you go in Trinidad and Tobago, you will see the Balize. You cut it, you chop it, you burn it, it will always grow back. So we may be on this side today, but tomorrow be guaranteed that the PNM will come back and lead this country to where it needs to be. He also mentioned pressure in the pipes now. This is under figurehead 15, just so I reference the right part of the supplementation. Under figurehead 15, he mentioned pressure in the pipes. I would like you to remember that this government is in office 14 months. If there's still pressure in the pipes, you need to talk to that man up there. And also, you mentioned the residents in Castara, Moriah, Mason Hall, the village that my family roots lay in. And you said, you know, their water situation isn't any better today. Yeah, it's not any better because of the member from Couva South down there. That's why it's not better. And this is the first time in how many years those residents have decided to strike. They never had a strike before. They had a strike up to recently, and it's because of that man. And yet, you sit with an administration that comes to the parliament and asks for constant extension of SOE after SOE. And the Hotelier Association in Tobago is telling you the SOE is negatively affecting the income from tourism, and you stand by this current administration. So much so that the chairman of your party, TPP, needed to stand up and say, no, it is just a professional arrangement. So again, I support my probably second or third cousin from Tobago, but ask yourself this, with regards to the Scarborough Secondary School refurbishment. You sit with the UNC government, ask yourself, who are the contractors? Who is going to benefit from this construction of Scarborough Secondary School? Is it really going to benefit the Tobago economy? Ask yourself this over and over, because the things implemented by the current administration is affecting Tobago's economy negatively over and over. I move to figurehead 65. I'll just touch on this very briefly. Figurehead 65 deals with the Minister of Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and CARICOM Affairs. And in there we see a $13 million allocation. When asked about this allocation by the honorable member from Port of Spain North St. Anne's West, the member for Tabaquite said this $13 million is to adjust, improve a mission in the US of Dr. Neil Parson. Now, during his tenure in 2011 to 2015, $211,000 US was spent on interior decorating for the premises he was at, and this was part of a $700,000 US renovation for the premises he was at. Again, I tell you over and over, look at the irresponsible fiscal measures put in place by this government. We see it countless times. Just for Tobago again, when you're speaking water improvement in Tobago, there's the Goldsboro, the Hillsboro, the different booster stations that impacted so many Tobagonians positively. But he will not mention that because he tends not to give credit because he is under the umbrella of those on that side. But that's okay. I understand your position, Tobago West. So on this day, this mid-year review and supplementation and variation of estimates for the fiscal year 2026, the Minister of Finance, he stood in front of this honorable house. In October, he painted a picture of economics, stability, planning. We were given an elaborative narrative of growth, commitment to national infrastructure. But today, as we are here debating the Standing Finance Committee, And when sitting down and asking the questions, the mask again has completely slipped from the Minister of Finance and what he's been trying to fool us with. The documents before us do not tell a story of progress. They reveal a systematic failure of budgeting, a series of desperate administrative corrections, and a profound mismatch between what this government says on the political platform and what actually shows up on the ledger. One of the main things that we saw in this particular mid-year review is every time we asked about loans and loans having amortization schedules, every single minister gave wishy-washy answers. And it bothered me to the point where I had to ask some of my friends who also did ACCA with me whether or not this was an incorrect practice happening. And they told me this is exactly what the Minister of Finance tried to do. He under-budgeted the entire budget by saying these loans are less than what they were stated as in the budget. He under-budgeted over and over and over. He under-budgeted. And when you count up the loans and you start to go through it, you see it's hundreds of millions of dollars under-budgeted by this finance minister. In other words, in October, what he did was violate accounting policies, 1, and 2, tell a mendacious story to the population. And that is exactly what the budget was. And that is why on this side, we label the budget as fake and fraudulent, because it is exactly what it was. Now, let me go into it some more. When we look at it, are we approving new, genuine development, or are we simply regularizing under-budgeted obligations, hidden liabilities, and delayed execution? The member for San Fernando East pointed out something in so many figures in there with reference to loans and the fact that the government is refinancing loans at higher interest rates. In other words, kicking the can down the road, and our children in Trinidad and Tobago will still be paying the debts that they're extending and incurring in this current administration. And the problem with it is there is no drive towards revenue generation that they are speaking about. All they are speaking about is spending. And the population has to be very concerned with this government because they are not talking about how this country is going to move forward. The non-energy sector is falling. Businesses are closing. Bars have closed and shut down. The entertainment industry is boiling. Cultural practitioners are not being paid. There is pain in this country. There's pain in this country to the point where even the Minister of Social Development came to this parliament and admitted this is the highest amount of citizens that are dependent on the national system in the way that they are in terms of social development. She came to the parliament and admitted that, and we could dance around the conversation how much we want. But closing URP, CPEP, forestry, and even sending home some contract workers, those things affected the economy. It's not a joke, and it's not something to laugh about in this parliament. Real people are impacted every day. People cannot send their children to school. And we sit in this parliament and we joke, and yes, sometimes things may get out of hand, but there are serious issues affecting the people of Trinidad and Tobago. The Minister of Education added to his allocation the increase of school feeding and book grants. It is because more people are reliant on these things, because it's difficult out there. As my friend who was in the gallery earlier would say, why is the country so hard? That is the question people are asking. Why is it so hard? And when I look at in the cultural industry and the entertainment industry, which I spent so many years of my life being part of, we are being asked under Head 86 to approve a massive mid-year increase that pushes the allocation for the ministry from an original $436.36 million to $485.64. On the surface, 49.28, roughly 11.3%. It looks like a windfall for our national heritage, our artists, and our communities. The government will beat its chest. They will say they are pouring into the cultural sector. Mr. Speaker, we have receipts. If you turn directly to the line items under subhead 04, current transfers to subsidies, item 11, transfers to state enterprises, the truth is laid in black and white. Every single element in terms of these loans, interest payment on TT, $200 million 4-year loan, revised upward by 4.11 million. Principal payment on that same 200 million loan, revised upward by staggering 25 million. Interest payment on a TT 100 million 2-year loan, revised upward by 143,000. Principal payment on 100 million 2-year loan, revised upward by $12.5 million. A lot of these allocations were allocations that were supposed to be made to NCC, and obviously, these are loans. We know what an amortization schedule for a loan looks like, and it was just the Minister of Finance again understating over and over and over. One of the reasons why we felt no need to ask the Minister of Culture any questions is because we knew, one, she would not be able to answer the questions, and two, looking at it, the figures tell an actual story. The story of this is, it is not a proactive investment in cultural production. This is not money going to our frontline cultural programming. Our steel bands are begging for money. They have not been paid since Carnival. Our local calypsonians, our community festivals, our youth training programs, not funded. Again, people have been waiting for money since Carnival, and this is not the big money contractors. It is the small man on the ground who needs that $1,000 to buy food and to send his children to school. That is who those amounts are affecting that are unpaid. But the big contractors from Flavor Village and other things, yeah, them sort out. And again, this is what the Minister of Culture and Community Development is doing. There's nothing inherently wrong with servicing state debt, but these are fixed, predictable loan obligations that we're dealing with. Why are all these things under-budgeted over and over in this current budget? Why did we have to come back here and beg the way we did? This brings to question, what is the wider economic policy in terms of generation? How do we generate income from the cultural sector, from the entertainment sector? This is not the conversation we are having today at all. All we are doing is asking for more money to spend. How are we making more money and generating money as a country? There were talks of a carnival city. There were talks of improving cultural festivals. And none of these talks are happening at all from the Minister of Culture. All we are seeing is, again, coming to the Parliament and asking for more money. I want to look at a particular item. Now, when we look at the figureheads under the Ministry of Culture and Community Development, we actually see in Best Village, traveling and subsistence being asked for a bigger allocation. We are a mere few weeks away from when Best Village is supposed to be happening, when Best Village is supposed to be active. Yet staff in the Ministry of Culture and Community Development do not know what is going on with the Prime Minister's Best Village competition. A competition that has been around since the days of Eric Williams. A competition that has produced many cultural performers in Trinidad and Tobago. Yet, there is no word of the competition, and members of staff at the ministry say they do not know what is going on. All they are being told is that the minister and her people will be handling Best Village. That, my friends, is a very, very dangerous precedent. And it's a very dangerous scenario for the cultural product and the culture and community of Trinidad and Tobago. When we talk about community centers, again, many community centers are open. La Hoqueta, Cocorite, and others throughout Trinidad and Tobago. And yes, member for Tuna Puna, a community center is a center for the community. I'd rather you do that than blow in our bag. Now, other than that, the member for Barataria Sawa, he came to the Parliament to bust files. But in busting files, he bust his own members' files. Because he came here to talk about the Mova pool. And I remember when we were going through the budget exercise, we also were talking about the Coquet pool, the La Hoqueta pool, and other pools that should have been open. And we countless times we talk about these facilities, and we even talk about the youth programs, and it's so funny, as we know he's the victim, he's the perpetrator of the act. The member for La Hokata Talparo, the Minister of Sport and Youth Affairs, gets up to walk out of the house. He so cannot face his responsibility. Because again, you know, Mr. Speaker, I love, like you, I'm a fan of literature. And I bounced up on a word. The word was pusillanimous. Well, either way, Mr. Speaker. Either way, Mr. Speaker.
Pusillanimous.
Huh? Well, Mr. Speaker, when I checked on Google, that's how it's pronounced. But I'll take your word. I'll take your word.
You could take my word for it.
I'll take your word. I'll take your word. You're a brilliant man. But it perfectly described so many of the members opposite, unable to do what they have to do, unable to accept their responsibilities, just feckless. Remember for Tuna Puna, let's not talk about you and words. Let's not talk about you and words, right? Also, Mr. Speaker, again, my drive in this conversation today has to do a lot with fiscal responsibility and revenue generation. As much as we look at the figures here, there are also the other part of it, which is revenue generation. We came to the Parliament during the budget and we spoke about sport tourism. The Minister of Tourism, Trade and Industry, when asked about sport tourism, he said we had big plans. No, he said we had big dreams. Those were his words, we have big dreams. Yet, again, when we come to the Parliament to ask for this supplementation, appropriation, we see no talk of any drives towards sport tourism. We actually, even in a World Cup season where the World Cup matches aren't available for the average citizen to see on free-to-air television. And that is something that is an anomaly. It's never happened before. Now, looking at sport and culture a little further, you finish your gonna see? Looking at sport and culture a little deeper, we also in a scenario where the Sport and Culture Fund is something that this government has not spoken about at all. And again, we are in a situation where athletes are quite often saying that they are underfunded, they are unable to go to tournaments, and they feel disrespected by this current administration. So not only are the athletes feeling disrespected, the cultural performers also feel disrespected.
Mr. Speaker, 55(1)(e), please. Remember, for Toko Sangigrani, just won't stop yapping. Thank you.
You see, I think it would be easier if the member who's on his legs would stop responding as well. But in any event, members, allow the member to continue in some silence, please.
Thank you very much for your protection, Mr. Speaker. Now, looking at the Ministry of the People, Social Development and Family Services, there's a pressing issue there in terms of staffing. And for my friends opposite, when I come to this Parliament to present, it always comes from a place of love, never a place of hate. Because me, like every other member on this side, we are passionate about Trinidad and Tobago, and we want the best possible outcomes for our country. What is taking place in terms of social development and family service is not reform, it's not transformation, and it's not progress. Before this government comes to Parliament seeking additional appropriations, it must first answer a few far more pressing questions with reference to this particular ministry. When one examines this ministry, we see the gradual erosion of the very workforce that is there responsible for delivering services to the most vulnerable citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. The information that I have, Mr. Speaker, is that there's not a single major division within that ministry operating at more than 40% of its approved staffing complement. It is because a lot of contract workers have been sent home and they are understaffed. Not social welfare, not family services, not the NGO unit, not ICT, not finance, even human resource in the Ministry of People and Social Development is not human resourced. The department responsible for recruiting, staffing, and retaining employees cannot adequately staff itself. Mr. Speaker, I challenge the minister today. Tell us about the different divisions. Tell us about at least one, because they are facing the reality of their staffage shorting, their staff shortages, and unable to complete the necessary work. Every single one of us on this side, we have constituents that have gone to that ministry and applied for grants and been rejected, been turned away. Some of them went with letters from their MPs and they are told their MP's letter holds no power because we are out of government. So again, we ask the minister to please look at the things affecting her ministry. Social welfare officers processing grants, not enough staff. Not enough staff to conduct assessments, investigations, program delivery. Officers ensuring that citizens receive the assistance approved is necessary. So what we are seeing, that short-term contract employees that were there previously, that were sent home, they were the bridge, preserving institutional knowledge, providing continuity, keeping grants and assessments and investigations in the ministry as a whole moving forward. And what happened when this government came into office? Well, if your contract expired, goodbye. This staffing crisis has now left the Ombudsman becoming the unofficial tracking system for delayed grants in this country. Every few weeks, another citizen is forced to seek the intervention of the Ombudsman simply to receive assistance that should have been delivered in the ordinary course of business. The difference is not just the vacancies, it's the people. The people that were there before held institutional knowledge, and because the contracts expired and were not renewed, they were removed. And we see a very similar situation when we had the Minister of Public Admin and AI here. He mentioned positions in the National ICT Company, and that the fact that they are looking for a CEO, they're looking for a head of accounting, a head of communications and marketing, and prior to April 28, 2025, these positions were filled. These positions were filled by professionals. However, the minister and those on the other side in wanting to ensure that friends, family, finances, all are employed in these institutions, did not renew any of those contracts. So again, in public admin and AI, they're suffering from the same problem that the Ministry of People and Social Development is also suffering from. I want to go back to figurehead 42 and the NPOPs program and the Minister of Local Government and Rural Development. As my colleague from Diego Martin Central mentioned, we have individuals in this program, after 5 fortnights, they are only paid for 1. These people continue to work because they know there's little to no opportunities in other ways in the market, so they continue to work. Yet, them working without getting paid, it is akin to slavery. That is what people are saying about the NPOPs program on the ground. And I urge this government to get in contact with the ground and understand what is happening and run away from that hubris. The other issue I want to touch on is Best Village. Again, I want to say and ask the Minister of Culture and Community Development to take a close look at Best Village. Use the knowledge of the staff that is already there, that has carried this program through the years to be an institution that has given us many of the great performers in Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Speaker, again, looking at this supplementation and appropriation in the mid-year review, we ask the Finance Minister in the future to please be honest with the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Please do not under-budget the figures. And with those few words, Mr. Speaker, I thank you and the people of Diego Martin West.